For years, tech mogul Eric Schmidt kept a clean separation between business and pleasure. But everything changed when he met Michelle Ritter, a young entrepreneur with whom Eric became romantically and professionally intertwined. However, their relationship exploded into a vicious legal war over business, money, and shocking claims of abuse. Now, as the two head toward a court date, the intimate details of their personal and financial codependence are being laid bare, revealing a battle for control and reputation. Let's get into it.
We are learning that she has accused him of abuse and of stalking her.
What was significant about this to us was the fact that this appeared to be the first time that he had launched a major business venture with someone that he was reported to have been dating.
Imagine being worth $44 billion and still checking your ex's Instagram stories.
Hi, I'm Katie Ring, and this is Crime House Daily, your weekday true crime companion. We follow the cases making headlines now where justice is still unfolding. This is a Night Watch episode bringing you today's biggest crime stories. For video, check out our YouTube channel at Crime House Daily and follow Night Watch on Spotify. This episode discusses active criminal cases and breaking news. The information we share is based on what's publicly available at the time of recording and may change as new evidence comes to light. We aim to inform, not to decide guilt or innocence, so everyone mentioned is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Tonight's story is about a heated battle between one of Silicon Valley's most powerful men and his mistress. In 2020, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt began a relationship with Michelle Ritter, a young entrepreneur who was one of the brightest upcoming minds in tech. But this wasn't a situation where Eric was just investing in Michelle's companies because they were dating. He truly believed in her, and they even owned businesses together. By the way, I hate when people say women sleep their way to the top, because let's be realistic, if this was true, women would be ruling the world. Eric and Michelle's personal and professional lives were completely intertwined. So when the relationship fell apart, their breakup wasn't as simple as going their separate ways. They owned businesses together, shared staff, and lived across multiple homes under the same financial structure. At first, they tried to work things out privately to avoid a public legal fight. But that changed when Michelle came forward with a shocking claim. She said Eric tried to silence her from speaking out about abuse. From there, negotiations collapsed, and now the two are headed toward a court date in December. To understand how they ended up here, we need to understand who Michelle is and who Eric is before everything got so complicated. Michelle Ritter is not just a billionaire's girlfriend. She graduated from Johns Hopkins in 2015 with a triple major in economics, international studies, and political science. After graduating, Michelle worked in research and national security, including positions at Stanford's Hoover Institution and the Department of Homeland Security. She then went on to earn a joint Juris Doctorate and MBA from Columbia University. Around the same time, Michelle also branched out on her own and founded a couple of startups, including a blockchain sports investment platform and later a payments infrastructure company. Her sports company even signed a huge agreement with FIFA. So all to say, Michelle was making big waves in business. And her career wasn't her only focus. In 2020, while 26-year-old Michelle was still a student at Columbia, actively founding multiple businesses, someone she knew from law school introduced her to 65-year-old Eric Schmidt, a big-time tech mogul. Eric was the CEO of Google from 2001 to 2011, before transitioning to executive chairman until 2017. He was extremely successful in those roles, and as of this recording, his net worth is estimated to be $48.8 billion. Despite their 39-year age gap, Michelle and Eric hit it off instantly and began dating. But they didn't go public with their relationship right away. It wasn't until July 11th, 2021, that Michelle and Eric were seen in public as a couple for the first time. That day, they attended the launch of Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic rocket plane in New Mexico. And after going public, their lives became more intertwined from there. A few months later, in September 2021, Michelle and Eric launched their first joint venture, a startup accelerator called Perlot, with offices in New York and LA. Michelle was named the founder and CEO of the company, but Eric was backing it financially. He initially invested at least $100 million in Perlot and took on the role of executive chairman. Eric wanted his investment money to help launch and invest in new companies under the Startup Accelerator's umbrella, and he said their mission was to be an AI and analytics company that invested in a broad range of sectors, from virtual reality to space exploration. Eric and Michelle were shooting for the moon, and they wanted everyone to know it. They hosted a party at the swanky Manhattan club Zero Bond to announce the launch, and the news made a big splash. Not just because of their lofty aspirations, but because this was the first time Eric had gotten involved in business with one of his girlfriends. And people love to follow Eric's dating life because his public dating history is almost as rich as he is. In fact, some people have even given Eric a salacious nickname. They call him Silicon Valley's most eligible married bachelor. By the time 65-year-old tech mogul Eric Schmidt met 26-year-old entrepreneur Michelle Ritter in 2020, he had been married for about 40 years. Although neither him or his wife had made an official statement about their marital arrangements, many sources close to the couple have said that they do have an open relationship, and he does not plan on ever leaving his wife. Regardless of their understanding, Eric is known for dating multiple women who are much younger than him. And these extramarital relationships have become so prolific and public that he earned the nickname Silicon Valley's most eligible married bachelor. He met his wife, 65-year-old Wendy Boyle, when they were both studying at UC Berkeley in 1980. Wendy has a master's degree in journalism and worked briefly at a tech company with Eric called Sun Microsystems before she became an interior designer. Independently, Wendy has a rich life. She took up competitive sailing at the age of 52 and spends a lot of her time at the Schmidt's waterfront compound in Nantucket, which is just one of her family's many luxurious residences, including houses in Miami and Montecito, a wealthy, picturesque coastal town in Santa Barbara, California, one of my personal favorite places. Wendy is also the president of the philanthropic Schmidt Family Foundation, where she oversees over $1 billion in assets. Wendy and Eric are a high-profile power couple. Together, they often attend the Davos World Economic Forum, which is a prestigious think tank in Switzerland that brings in global leaders from every sector. At the same time, they've been through a lot together. In 2017, one of their two daughters passed away after a long illness. Losing a child can be extremely hard on any marriage. But in the wake of tragedy, Wendy and Eric actually managed to stick by each other's sides. And many people credit that to them finding an arrangement that worked for them, their alleged open relationship. What would be a fragile situation for many seemed relatively drama-free for Eric and Wendy. In 2019, Wendy even attended the World Economic Forum, while Eric's current mistress was also there. Eric and Wendy's arrangement suits them both, and she doesn't feel any need to discuss her husband's private relationships. Though the same can't be said for the media. The first time Eric's extramarital dating life became public knowledge was in 2010, when he was spotted with CNN reporter Kathy Bonner at Burning Man. He was still working at Google at the time, and the public relationship surprised a lot of people. And although Eric and Kathy's relationship didn't last long, Eric started giving people plenty more to talk about. Public interest in Eric's dating life heated up in 2013 when he bought a $15 million duplex penthouse on West 21st Street in Manhattan. He specifically chose a building without a doorman to ensure that nobody would see who was coming in and out. Not only that, but he had the unit soundproofed for an extra layer of privacy, in case someone tried to listen in. Then in 2019, Eric started dating a medical grad student and fashionista who was 32 years younger than him, named Alexandra Duisberg. Engagement rumors started flying when Eric gifted Alexandra a giant 10-carat pink sapphire ring. But Eric had no intention of leaving Wendy. In fact, a ring like that is a kind of gift he's given many of his mistresses over the years. Eric seemed to have a penchant for high-achieving women, including fashion designers, PR executives, and concert pianists. But Wendy was and would always be his rock. Although these lines seem to get pretty blurry from his mistresses, I can't imagine getting a 10-carat pink sapphire and not thinking there was anything else going on there. But Eric tries to maintain a clear distinction between his girlfriends and his wife. He brings Wendy to all of the high-level events and state visits, while his girlfriends accompany him to clubs and parties. For years, this was his MO. But Michelle Ritter is a little bit different. She was the very first girlfriend Eric went into business with. However, even though Eric seemed to be making a very intentional move, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Pretty soon, their company, Perlot, started hitting road bumps. The company quickly burned through cash, and by early 2023, Perlot fell behind on payroll and operating expenses. They had to request emergency funds from Eric's wealth management firm just to keep the lights on. At the same time, the financial boundary between Perlot and Eric's other companies grew increasingly blurry. For example, Michelle claimed that a major stealth AI initiative called Future House originated under Perlot and its philanthropic arm. But 2 witnesses said that the project actually received only a small payment from Michelle, and that over $10 million came instead from Eric's other business entities. Meanwhile, some Perlot staff were paid through a separate company called Autumn Management. Autumn Management, which is basically a household staffing company, was run by Michelle's father, and Eric hired them to help run his various properties. Michelle called Autumn Management a personal endeavor, but it actually operated under one of Eric's other businesses, meaning the money from Autumn used to pay people at Perlot was actually coming from Eric. The more intertwined Eric and Michelle become, the more people start to wonder who was really in charge at Perlot. Eric insisted that it was Michelle's company and that he was just there to offer a little guidance and support and sit in meetings from time to time. But for Perlot employees, that begs the question of why the company is struggling so much. After all, Eric had a long track record of running extremely successful tech companies. Shouldn't he be helping Michelle avoid these cash flow issues? Perhaps as a way to keep people happy, Michelle often hosted business meetings at the Bel Air mansion, which is actually more like a compound. It has 13 bedrooms, well-tended gardens, including a koi pond, and old Hollywood touches like the sweeping staircase and marble coffee table. Michelle lived there primarily, but she also bounced around between Eric's penthouse in Manhattan and his $47 million sprawling lakeside estate near East Hampton. She was living a lavish lifestyle, to say the least, which might be just one way she tried to maintain appearances. By late 2023, Michelle began telling employees and prospective investors that Perlot had backing from major figures like Jeff Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, and Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds. Michelle and Eric did often attend parties with these people, but employees began to feel like the company's story wasn't matching reality. And when pressed, Michelle clarified these were discussions or letters of intent, not finalized investments. Perlot managed to scrape by, but once the rumors about the company started, there was no stopping them. And in October 2023, Forbes started digging into their business and romantic relationship. And while they both declined to discuss their dating life, there were whispers that they were spending less time together. Neither of them publicly denied it, but Eric's spokesperson stated that his personal relationship with Michelle was separate from the success of Perlot, and that he planned to continue supporting the company financially. But behind the scenes, things weren't going so smoothly. Michelle and Eric had not only been arguing over company operations and money in general, but Michelle's access to the Bel Air mansion was also a point of contention. Though it wasn't publicly confirmed, it was starting to seem more and more like the couple had called it quits. But despite what was going on in their personal lives, they still wanted to keep their financial disputes out of the courtroom, so they entered legal mediation to try and resolve things. But by the spring of 2024, it became clear that they hadn't made any progress, and on April 4th of that year, during a mediation session, one of Eric's lawyers drops a bombshell. In the spring of 2024, Michelle and Eric were in the middle of arbitration. At first, it seemed like proceedings were going well. But then Eric's lawyers make a surprising move, one that opened up a ton of questions about what was really going on between the tech mogul and his mistress. Eric's lawyers said that they would refuse to settle unless Michelle promised that she wouldn't make any allegations of abuse or harassment. And Michelle's lawyers refused, which sparked immediate retaliation from Eric. The same month, Michelle was pushed out of one of her other companies. And over the next few weeks, Eric locked Michelle out of almost all of the residences she had access to, without even giving her any time to move her things out beforehand, which meant she no longer had access to several personal and business-related items. As of this recording, Michelle still hasn't gotten any of her things back. Then, in May 2024, Eric seemed to send a message to the world about his relationship status with Michelle when he attended a party with Wendy instead of her. Remember, Eric normally brings Wendy to the most high-profile events and saves the parties for his girlfriends. But not this time. People are so shocked Eric and Wendy's outing even makes the news. After that, Michelle seems ready to put her and Eric's romance in the past. She's retained access to the Bel Air mansion, but in late 2024, she moved all of her things out. She got her own apartment in Beverly Hills, located above a Jersey Mike's sandwich shop. Now that they had more physical space, it seemed like Michelle and Eric might be able to settle their differences for good. In December 2024, they came to a written settlement agreement that requires Eric to make substantial payments to Michelle. The exact details of that contract have remained sealed, but the peace between them didn't last long. After signing the agreement, Eric did something completely unexpected. He locked Michelle out of the Steal Perlot website. Michelle was devastated. In her eyes, Eric had taken something that belonged to her. And unfortunately, this wasn't the end of the turmoil. On December 9th, 2024, Michelle's parents went out to dinner together in LA. Remember, Michelle's dad manages one of Eric's companies, Autumn Management. If the two men had any disputes, they'd kept it under wraps. Until that night when Eric made a bizarre move and had two private investigators follow Michelle's parents to and from dinner. Her parents realized what was happening and called the police. But when officers arrived and confronted the PIs, they said that they were working private security detail for a billionaire. The incident seemed to end there. But afterward, Michelle felt violated, and she wasn't ready to give up her control or her side of the story. So 2 days later, on December 11th, Michelle decided to make a big move, and she filed for a domestic violence restraining order. In the filing, she claimed that Eric was using his resources, connections, and digital access to monitor, isolate, and pressure her. She also says he attempted to force her into signing statements denying past abuse. The filing caused a huge splash, and even more media attention swelled on January 6, 2025, when Michelle later withdrew the filing after she and Eric reached an agreement. However, after several months, Michelle then claimed that Eric hadn't been living up to his end of the agreement. So in September 2025, Michelle refiled and sued Eric, this time representing herself. At the same time, Eric took legal action against Michelle for a $75,000 court fee that was part of their arbitration proceedings. She said that she can't afford to pay it, but that it was also Eric's way of trying to silence her through financial domination. But the hits kept on coming. On October 8th, Eric's lawyer submitted an 82-page response to Michelle's restraining order. They said her accusations were obviously false and an abuse of the judicial system. At the same time, they filed a motion to seal the court documents. As of this recording, there hasn't been a final ruling on the matter. Many details of this case and the history between Michelle and Eric still remain unknown. The next court hearing will take place on December 4th, 2025. As of this recording, Eric and his wife are still together, with one source saying that they just saw him and Wendy after they met with the Prince of Saudi Arabia together. Meanwhile, Michelle has stayed quiet as all of this plays out. But judging on what we know so far, the fireworks won't be ending anytime soon. And as always, we'll be sure to bring you all of the major updates. What did you think of tonight's case? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. See you next time. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Crime House Daily and follow us on social media at Crime House 24/7 for real-time updates, because the pursuit of justice never stops.